went up to her doorstep with a loaded gun in my pocket. I proceeded to talk to Mrs. Buttafuoco. She turned around to walk away. I hit her on the back of the head. I went to hit her again, and the gun went off.
She planned this. This was a cold-blooded murder. The only mistake that she made was I didn't die.
Amy Fisher was born August 24, 1974, and grew up in a modest home in Wantagh, New York. Located on the South Shore of Long Island, it was a neighborhood of blue-collar families that worked hard to make ends meet. But when she was 13, her family moved to Merrick. While only a few miles away, it seemed worlds apart. She found herself in a new environment of wealth and privilege, where doctors and lawyers lived in big houses and drove fancy cars. Growing up in the 80s, mothers were joining the workforce in increasing numbers and childcare options were limited. This gave rise to the latchkey kid, a child who returns to a vacant home after school, which was typical for Gen X kids. Because their parents were at work, they were left with no supervision. Kids could easily avoid the consequences of their poor decisions. Teenagers tend not to think before they act or consider the consequences of their actions. The frontal lobe is the part of the brain that controls decision-making, impulse control, sensation-seeking, emotional responses, and consequential thinking. It does not fully mature until early adulthood. Because their brains are still developing, teenagers are more likely to act on impulse, get confused by social cues and emotions, and engage in dangerous or risky behavior. But shooting the wife of your 36-year-old lover is hardly a normal case of adolescent angst. Amy's father tried to give Amy everything she wanted or needed. In an effort to blend in and become part of the new upper-class area they moved to, Amy received a car on her 16th birthday. Amy first encountered Joey Buttafuoco in the summer of 1991 when she brought that new car into his auto body shop. She had accidentally ripped off the side mirror and was scared of her father's reaction. Joey allegedly helped her concoct a cover story about being hit by a car at the mall, saving her from getting in trouble. Whenever she visited the shop, he gave her attention and compliments, making her feel valued and loved. Amy saw Joey as a rich, handsome man who could make her happy. She believed he was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Amy has described the relationship as romantic, claiming that Joey professed his love for her and expressed how he wanted to get rid of his wife. Amy became infatuated with Joey, and she would do anything he asked her to. Mary Jo Buttafuoco was at her home in Massapequa, Long Island, on May 19, 1992, when a young woman knocked on the front door. Mary Jo opened the door, not suspecting a thing, maybe Girl Scouts selling cookies. Amy Fisher told the woman her name was Anne Marie. She said that her 16-year-old sister was having an affair with Mary Jo's husband. Mary Jo was skeptical, so Amy showed her a T-shirt from the auto body shop, saying that she found it in her sister's bedroom. Mary Jo didn't buy it. She said in a dismissive tone, "I'll tell him you stopped by," and turned around to shut the door behind her. That's when Amy removed the gun she had been holding in her pocket. She had bought the .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun a few days earlier from her friend Peter. He had agreed to be her getaway driver and was waiting in his car a few doors down. Amy maintains that she only intended to hit Mary Jo with the gun and that it went off accidentally. Mary Jo was shot in the head and collapsed on the steps of her home. Neighbors called 911 upon hearing the shot. Amy and Peter fled, dumping the car's license plates and the gun down a storm drain. They were gone before the cops or paramedics arrived. The bullet entered Mary Jo's right cheek and passed through her neck, leaving her critically injured. Upon arrival at the hospital, doctors worked to stabilize her condition. They performed a lengthy 9-hour operation to repair her carotid artery, and she was on a ventilator for several days. The bullet remains lodged near her spine to this day. The presence of the bullet near such a sensitive area made its removal risky, so the doctors made the decision to leave it in place. In addition to hearing loss, Mary Jo also had facial paralysis, which caused one side of her face to droop. The police eagerly waited to see when Mary Jo would eventually recover enough to tell them what had happened. When she did, she told them about the girl and the t-shirt. The police asked Joey about the t-shirt, and he said he had only given one out recently, to a girl called Amy Fisher. He claimed he didn't really know her well and that she was just a customer. He offered to try to contact Amy, and the police were able to track her down. They placed her under arrest and charged her with attempted second-degree murder, first-degree assault, and multiple firearms-related felonies. The term Lolita typically refers to an attractive young woman who engages in relationships with older men. In Fisher's case, the media adopted the label Long Island Lolita to capture the sensationalized aspects of her involvement with Joey Buttafuoco, an older married man. The news coverage surrounding Amy Fisher's case was extensive due to the scandalous nature of the story. A teenage girl engaging in a sexual relationship with a married man, culminating in a violent attack on his wife. The portrayal of Fisher as a seductive, manipulative teenager fueled the tabloid media. Amy maintained that she had been in a relationship with Joey, and that he knew of her plans and encouraged her to kill his wife. Joey dismissed these allegations, as did Mary Jo. Within a week of Amy's arrest, a man called Peter DeRosa contacted the tabloid TV show A Current Affair. He claimed that Amy was an escort and he could prove it. He secretly videotaped one of their encounters where he paid her $100 before having sex. He was paid $7,500 for the tape, and when it aired, it sparked a massive controversy. It was broadcast on national television the night before Amy's bail hearing. Her bail was set at $2 million. At the time, it was the highest bail ever in the county's history. Despite her attorney's efforts, the judge refused to lower the bail. Amy's parents used all their assets as collateral, but it still wasn't enough to secure her freedom. To raise the rest of the money, her lawyer persuaded Amy to sell her story to a production company. This caused a public outcry due to the perceived violation of the Son of Sam law. This is a law that prevents convicted criminals in the United States from profiting from their crimes through books or movie deals. However, Amy was charged, not convicted, and in the United States, the accused are innocent until proven guilty. Therefore, it was well within Amy's rights to do this. She later said that this was a bad decision made under pressure from her lawyer, and that the movie and book that had resulted from this deal were filled with falsehoods. In the meantime, the Buttafuocos were also inking book and movie deals and making a lot of television appearances, drawing massive attention wherever they went. It was the analog version of going viral. Her defense attorney maintained that Joey took advantage of her vulnerable state as a young teenager and engaged in a sexual relationship with her, despite being aware of her age. He argued that she had been emotionally manipulated by a man 20 years her senior, and that he was behind her employment as a call girl. That Joey had introduced her to the business and even got a cut of her fees. He had often remarked to Amy about how much he hated his wife and wanted her gone, and there was evidence proving that he paid for their many visits to cheap motels. Amy's attorney was able to secure a plea deal where Amy would plead guilty to the assault charge and the others would be dropped. This would avoid a lengthy trial that would be sure to be a media feeding frenzy. But the storm was far from over. Right before the sentencing, a show called Hard Copy aired hidden camera footage of Amy speaking with her friend Paul. In the tape, she could be heard saying, "I want my name in the press. Why? Because I can make a lot of money. I figure if I'm going through all of this pain and suffering, I'm getting a Ferrari." She later wrote in a book that this conversation was engineered by Paul. She claimed he was given questions to ask, and instructed to ask them in a way that would prompt responses which the show could cut together out of context. When Amy saw the tape, she made an attempt on her own life and was brought to a psychiatric hospital. The DA publicly stated that they would not be pursuing any charges on Joey Buttafuoco for the statutory rape of Amy Fisher. Amy pled guilty to the first-degree assault charges and was sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. The DA's office changed their mind about bringing charges against Joey once Amy was convicted. Joey was charged with 19 criminal charges, including statutory rape, sodomy, and endangering the welfare of a minor. Joey had initially denied any wrongdoing, but he later accepted a plea deal. He admitted that he had sexual relations with Fisher when she was 16 and that he was aware of her age. He received a 6-month jail sentence, but was released after serving 4 months. According to Amy, she had a very difficult time in prison. The guards would be extra hard on her to knock her down a few pegs, thinking she was some rich celebrity type being on TV. They would urinate in her food and give her rotten milk, leaving her to go hungry. She would sometimes get some scraps from other inmates who felt sorry for her. She would inform her defense attorney, who would object to the prison, and then they would confine her in protective custody, which meant being locked up for 23 hours a day. The facility would provide everyone with the opportunity to watch the 3 made-for-TV movies about her case, and this caused a lot of unwanted attention for her. Amy was transferred to another prison that was slightly less awful than the previous one, but still a living hell. Then she made a connection with a guard who showed her some compassion. He would protect her from the other inmates and sometimes flirt with her. She wrote a sincere letter to him, but was caught with it and put in the SHU, the secure housing unit where inmates are isolated. The tabloids ate it up, publishing juicy stories about her, quote, lesbian love affairs and her encounters with multiple guards. In her 2004 book, Amy admits to her relationship with the one guard. She says that she was desperate for any sort of positive attention and that the relationship was inappropriate on his part and naive on hers. She denied having intimate relationships with other prisoners and claims many inmates would band together as girlfriends so that they could protect one another. She says the reports of her relations with guards were all non-consensual. Her mother Rose visited her and smuggled her underwear out after Amy informed her of these incidents. Rose submitted it to a lab which confirmed male DNA present on the clothing. The guard in question submitted to a blood test, and the DNA matched. He quietly resigned, and there was no further action taken by the prison. Amy and her mother brought a civil suit against the Department of Corrections in 1996. The court ruled against her, saying, Fisher has failed to establish a clear or substantial likelihood of success on her sexual abuse claim. Simply put, after carefully considering the testimony offered at the hearing and other evidence in the record, the court finds that Fisher's claims of rape and sexual abuse are not credible. Neither Fisher nor her mother was a credible witness, and their testimony was contradicted by other witnesses and other evidence in the record. The New York Adult Survivors Act, passed in 2022, has allowed anyone who was abused to seek justice and compensation through the civil justice system, no matter how long ago the abuse occurred. In April 2023, a federal civil lawsuit was filed that accuses the New York State Department of Corrections of failing to protect female inmates from abuse by male staff. Several officers named in the civil suit have been criminally convicted of abuse. A lawyer for the plaintiff said, "The New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision has repeatedly allowed the rights of female inmates to be violated by cultivating a culture in which abuse by prison guards and staff persisted for decades. The rising number of assaults implicating correctional officers from Albion Correctional Facility is staggering. Victims of prison abuse are often intimidated into silence because policies to investigate and discipline wrongdoers are not enforced. It's time for this culture of secrecy and silence to end, allowing justice for those who have suffered immeasurable harm by this broken system which has, for far too long, protected abusers more than the abused." Amy returned to court in 1998 with the intention of appealing her conviction. She accuses her former lawyer, Eric Nyberg, of lying to her and having an inappropriate relationship with her. Her new lawyer said that the affair was a conflict of interest and hurt her defense. He said that Mr. Nyberg was more interested in Amy Fisher's sex life than her case. He argued that Mr. Nyberg fooled Amy into pleading guilty by promising her a work release deal that the prosecutors never agreed to. Amy had many poems and letters that she received from Mr. Nyberg while in prison. He would often visit her, chartering a plane from Long Island to the jail, which was near the New York-Canada border. Mr. Nyberg denied everything and said, "I am one of the last of a long line of individuals with whom she has alleged improper conduct." He referenced her allegations of sexual misconduct against 8 prison officers and said, "They were dismissed as being incredible, as will the charges against me." Amy's allegations of abuse in prison later turned out to be a systemic issue. Perhaps her claims regarding her lawyer were not as outlandish as previously thought. A deal was made between the DA and her lawyer that implied Mr. Nyberg's improper behavior without officially admitting it. As a result, her sentence was reduced and she became eligible for parole immediately. Amy wrote an apology letter to Mary Jo, who supported her parole request. She was released in 1999. Everyone involved in this sensational story has faced various consequences and outcomes after the ordeal was over. They have all maintained their public profile over the years and are definitely cashing in on their fame. Everyone has appeared on TV specials and talk shows. Amy's husband even competed with Joey in a celebrity boxing match. All 3 have been guests on The Howard Stern Show, a radio show known for its provocative content, so all the appearances were full of drama and tension. The most sensational episode was in 2008, when Amy was on the show and Mary Jo's daughter Jessie, who was an adult by then, called in and confronted Amy. Amy was so upset that she walked out of the show. Jessie has since become more vocal and involved in the saga. The story has been squeezed for everything it's worth, and TV specials are still being created about it, even as recently as 2019. Mary Jo eventually ended her marriage with Joey, and she continued appearing on TV shows and published a memoir in 2009. With the help of the Oprah Winfrey Show, she underwent surgery to restore her smile. She later remarried and was widowed in 2018. Joey was arrested in 1995 for soliciting an undercover officer who was posing as a prostitute. In 2004, he pled guilty to auto insurance fraud and served 1 year in prison. He is also prohibited from working in the auto repair industry for life. A felony conviction barred him from owning ammunition, but in August 2005, probation officers found some in his home during a search. He did not contest the charge and served 4 months. He married a woman named Ivanka, who, ironically, he had met at his auto body shop. She filed for divorce in 2007, but has since withdrawn the petition. After her release, Amy adopted a new identity and enrolled in college. She tried to alter her appearance by hiding behind big sunglasses and bleaching her hair. She couldn't keep a job for long because she would be exposed by employees who realized who she was. But she was determined to lead a normal life. She says she rejected a $1 million offer from Playboy to pose naked. She eventually saved enough for facial surgery and disappeared for years. She married a retired NYPD officer and had 3 kids with him, but the drama was far from over. Amy's marriage was rocked by a scandal in 2007 when an X-rated tape of her and her husband surfaced. She claimed that her husband, who had briefly separated from her at the time, leaked the tape without her consent. He denied any involvement and said that he was also a victim of the leak. Amy sued the production company that distributed the tape and reached a settlement.
If you get involved in this world, Amy,
I'm not going to be a porn star.
You're not?
Just going to the conventions.
You're not?
She made a few more movies and even became a webcam model. She said she never wanted to be in the adult film industry and only did it because her husband pressured her. He disputed this and said that he's never profited from her career. They got back together after the scandal, but divorced 4 years later. After the divorce, she maintained her cam model career and made guest appearances at strip clubs. Do you think she is just using her fame for money, and is she truly satisfied with her work? Some may argue that she is empowered and independent, but others may think she is lowering herself and objectifying her body. Do you think her troubled relationships have driven her to seek attention in a harmful way? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below.
Is she this sweet, innocent little person that big, bad Mr. Buttafuoco took advantage of?